Ukraine has not, and most countries have not been able to explore in the deep waters of the Black Sea because it's so deep and it's so difficult to drill in that environment. However, this country that just signed a contract with Ukraine, this company that just signed a contract with Ukraine, is convinced that the Black Sea off of Ukraine will be the new Caspian Sea in terms of oil and gas resources. So the first thing is diversify your resources. And one way to do that is to develop your own resources in the Black Sea, onshore as well. There are a lot of deposits of oil and gas in Ukraine that can be developed, that haven't been yet developed. There are alternative sources. Ukraine, of course, has the best agricultural land in the world, and agricultural land now is becoming the source of energy. Biofuels, biodiesel fuels are being grown around the world and turned into fuel for cars and for power plants. And Ukraine has great potential to do that. There are wind possibilities. There are nuclear possibilities. Now, nuclear gets to the same problem. Right now, all of your nuclear fuel comes from Russia. It doesn't have to be that way. And indeed, there's an experiment going on right now in one of your nuclear power plants to see if another company from another country can also provide, has the capability, to see if it has the capability to manufacture nuclear fuel for Ukrainian reactors. And so far, this experiment is going well. And the company, Westinghouse, is going to do another evaluation of how this experiment is going. And if the experiment works and it looks good so far, then Ukraine would have two options. It would undoubtedly continue to buy most of its fuel from Russia. That's the established pattern and relationship. But it would have the option of buying from another company that could provide competition. Competition is one of the main ways, not the only way, there's another way I'll come in a minute, but one of the main ways to deal with dependence. If you have competition from other fuels, domestic fuels, other energy resources, other alternative fuels, competition works. Competition is one way. The second way, and again, the United States has had some experience in this, because we are dependent on foreign oil, because we are dependent on oil coming in from South America, from the Persian Gulf, and in particular, oil supplies from the Persian Gulf, as we know from history, recent history, can be interrupted. We have come up with a way, not a perfect way, but at least a way to begin to deal with that dependence, and that is by putting oil in the ground. We have a strategic petroleum reserve in Louisiana. It turns out there's some big salt domes in Louisiana that are just perfect for storing many hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil, millions of barrels of oil. So if there were another oil supply disruption, we would not be totally dependent on that, and we could go to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to replace that oil for some period of time. So there are some emergency measures you can take. There's some competition work that you can do to diversify the sources of energy. And those are two of the ways, I would say one further way that you could deal with this. And that is by making the contracts that Ukraine has for its natural gas, just for example, transparent. The contract right now, under which Ukraine buys its natural gas, the gas that comes from Central Asia and comes from Russia, those contracts are not very transparent. Those contracts actually depend on a middleman, a company that is between Russia and Ukraine that is responsible, that has gotten the ability through fairly non-transparent ways to import gas into Ukraine. it's not clear to us why you need that non-transparent organization in the middle. So a third way of reducing dependence is to make all the contracts transparent and commercially driven and according to European standards. So there are ways that you can address that situation.
Any other questions?
Yeah, there's someone all the way in the back. Very good. The question was the role of the Ukrainian army in various hotspots around the world, if I got that right. Ukraine, your government has decided that it will support various military actions around the world, like in Kosovo, like in the Balkans, like in Africa, like in Afghanistan, and for a while there was participation of a brigade in Iraq. And these decisions were the decisions of your governments over time. I can say two things about that. Number one, those deployments of Ukrainian armed forces against common enemies is very much appreciated. The United States appreciates it. Other Western European countries appreciate Ukrainians' participation and contribution. People in the Balkans, where instability threatens and the international community had to send military forces in to keep the peace and try to facilitate movements toward new democracies in the Balkans. Ukraine helped out in those areas. Same thing in Afghanistan, same thing in Iraq. So the number one, the international community appreciates the work that Ukrainian soldiers have done. Number two, Ukrainian soldiers have done a very good job in these places. Ukrainian soldiers have shown that their commitment and their training and their capabilities are very good. Ukraine is the only non-member of NATO that is a participant in all of the NATO activities around the world. And it's because Ukraine has capabilities that the international community appreciates and that are needed in order to provide stability in these countries. So it's appreciated, and Ukraine has done a very good job.